Aljamain Sterling is once again positioning himself for a title opportunity, this time at featherweight, after building momentum with consecutive wins in the division. Following his recent victory over Youssef Zalal at UFC Vegas 116, the former bantamweight champion has made it clear that his ultimate goal is a second UFC belt, and he believes he has the tools to trouble reigning champion Alexander Volkanovski in ways others haven't. Sterling's confidence largely stems from his grappling pedigree, which he argues offers a unique challenge compared to past opponents Volkanovski has faced. While the Australian champion famously held his own against Islam Makhachev, arguably the most dominant grappler in the sport, Sterling insists that stylistic differences matter more than reputation. In breaking down that comparison, Sterling pointed to how Makhachev controlled positions, particularly during their first fight, where he took Volkanovski's back but didn't inflict significant damage from that position. Sterling believes that's where his own approach diverges. He emphasized that when he secures dominant grappling positions, he actively looks to create offense, whether through strikes or submission threats, rather than simply maintaining control. He also referenced his own recent performances to underline that distinction. Against Zalal, Sterling demonstrated his ability to control the back while remaining offensively productive, contrasting that with his earlier loss to Movsar Evloev, where he was neutralized by strong defensive awareness. That experience, he suggests, has only sharpened his approach and made him more dangerous in future matchups. Sterling's argument is essentially that Volkanovski hasn't yet faced someone who blends relentless back control with consistent damage in quite the same way. While Makhachev's grappling is elite, Sterling sees himself as a different kind of threat, one that forces reactions and creates chaos rather than relying on positional dominance alone. Of course, the path to a title shot isn't straightforward. Evloev, who holds a win over Sterling and remains unbeaten in the UFC, is widely viewed as a leading contender after continuing his strong run in the division. That creates a potential hurdle for Sterling, who may need to make a compelling case to leapfrog other contenders in line. Still, the former bantamweight king is leaning into his resume and name value, pitching the idea of a high-profile legend versus legend clash with Volkanovski. At 36, Sterling understands that his window for another title run may be limited, which adds urgency to his call-out. For Volkanovski, the matchup would present an interesting stylistic test. He has already proven his ability to handle high-level grapplers, particularly in his closely contested bout with Islam Makhachev at UFC 284, where many, including Joe Rogan, felt he may have done enough to win. But Sterling's confidence lies in the belief that familiarity with one grappling style doesn't automatically translate to success against another. Whether or not the UFC books the fight next, Sterling has made his stance clear. He doesn't just see himself as another challenger, he sees himself as a stylistic puzzle that Volkanovski hasn't solved yet. Francis Ngannou believes the current state of the heavyweight division isn't a coincidence, it's the result of long-term mismanagement by the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Looking at today's roster compared to past eras, the contrast is hard to ignore. The division was once defined by dominant champions and high-level matchups featuring names like Miocic, Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos, Brock Lesnar, Randy Couture, and Fabricio, fighters who helped shape heavyweight into one of the sport's marquee divisions. Fast forward to 2026, and Ngannou sees a very different picture. The former champion pointed to a lack of depth, inconsistent matchmaking, and underwhelming performances as signs that something has gone wrong. Recent data has backed up that perception, showing a division with no former undisputed champions currently active, a limited number of fighters on winning streaks, and a surprisingly high number carrying losing records. That imbalance is translated into fights that often fail to deliver the excitement traditionally associated with heavyweight MMA. Ngannou didn't mince words when discussing the root of the issue. In his view, the promotion itself has mishandled the division, whether through booking decisions, talent development, or failing to keep momentum around its top contenders. While he didn't point to a single moment where things went off track, his criticism suggests a gradual decline rather than a sudden scoot. He also referenced current interim champion Tom Aspinall as an example of the division's instability. Despite being one of the most promising heavyweights on the roster, Aspinall has faced uncertainty around activity and title opportunities, highlighting what Ngannou sees as a broader pattern of mismanagement affecting even the top tier. The in-cage product has only fueled those concerns. Fights like the much-criticized bout between Tyson Tavisa and Tai Tuivasa have drawn backlash from fans, with some even questioning whether the division is delivering enough quality to justify its place at the top level of the sport. That kind of reaction would have been almost unthinkable during earlier eras, when heavyweight bouts routinely headlined major cards and produced highlight reel finishes. Ngannou's perspective carries weight given his own track record. During his UFC run, he was one of the division's most feared finishers, scoring emphatic knockouts over elite opponents including Miocic, Velasquez, and Dos Santos. His fights rarely went the distance, and he played a major role in keeping the division relevant before his departure from the promotion. Now competing outside the UFC, Ngannou is preparing for his return to MMA against Felipe Lins, marking his first appearance since 2024. Even from the outside, he continues to keep a close eye on the division he once ruled, and he doesn't like what he sees. Whether or not his criticism is entirely fair is up for debate. Heavyweight has historically gone through cycles of strength and weakness, often tied to the emergence or absence of elite talent. But Ngannou's argument cuts deeper than that, suggesting structural issues rather than a temporary dip in quality. If the UFC wants to restore the division's former prestige, it may need more than just new contenders. It may require a rethink of how the heavyweight landscape is built and maintained. Paulo Costa is riding high after his successful move up to light heavyweight, and he's already eyeing a blockbuster showdown with Khamzat Chimaev on his own terms. Following a statement knockout win over Aljamain Sterling at UFC 327, Costa made it clear that he feels stronger and more dangerous than ever at 205 pounds. While he hasn't ruled out a return to middleweight to challenge Chimaev for the title, Costa is openly encouraging the champion to move up instead. From his perspective, the difference in physicality at light heavyweight would be decisive. Without the need to cut weight, Costa believes he's operating at full power, something he claims would make the matchup significantly more difficult for Boers. Costa didn't hold back when describing how he sees that fight playing out. In his view, a clash at 205 wouldn't just favor him, it would be overwhelming. He emphasized the added size, strength, and endurance he carries at light heavyweight would create a scenario that Chimaev hasn't experienced before inside the octagon. At the same time, Costa is keeping his options open. He acknowledged that light heavyweight feels like a natural fit moving forward, but he hasn't completely closed the door on returning to 185 pounds, especially if a title opportunity against Chimaev materializes. That flexibility reflects both his ambitions and the reality that the biggest fights may still be at middleweight, for now. Chimaev remains firmly at the center of Costa's plans, particularly with the champion set to defend his belt against Sean Strickland at UFC 328. A dominant performance there could further build interest in a future showdown, whether at middleweight or potentially at light heavyweight if Chimaev ever decides to chase a second title. Costa also framed the rivalry as something the sport needs, a high-intensity, personality-driven feud reminiscent of classic matchups like Wanderlei Silva versus Quinton Jackson. He sees himself as a fresh force in the division, capable of bringing that kind of energy back, especially as divisions shift and fighters like Alex Pereira continue moving between weight classes. For now, the fight remains hypothetical, but Costa's message is clear. If Chimaev wants the challenge, he's ready, and he believes the outcome at 205 pounds would be one-sided. Dana White has revealed that the Ultimate Fighting Championship is set to do something it has deliberately avoided for years when it heads to Washington, D.C. for UFC Freedom 250 on June 14th. The promotion will include a performance of the Star-Spangled Banner, marking a rare departure from its usual stance of not featuring national anthems during events. White has long resisted incorporating anthems into UFC broadcasts, largely because of the organization's global identity. With fighters representing countries from all over the world, he's consistently argued that introducing one or multiple national anthems doesn't fit the promotion's international audience. In his view, it risks complicating broadcasts and creating unnecessary pre-fight ceremony that doesn't align with MMA's pace. That said, the unique nature of this event has prompted a change. The card is scheduled to take place on the South Lawn of the White House and coincides with the 80th birthday of Donald Trump. With a strong patriotic theme and a large presence of military guests expected in attendance, the inclusion of the national anthem is being treated as a one-off exception rather than a permanent shift in UFC policy. The event itself is shaping up to be one of the most unusual and high-profile cards in company history. In the main event, Ilia Topuria defends his lightweight title against Justin Gaethje, while Alex Pereira faces Cyril Gane for the interim heavyweight championship. The lineup also includes fan favorite Derek Lewis, who is reportedly added to the card following direct interest from Trump and is now set to face Josh Hokett. Beyond the anthem decision, the UFC is also adjusting its bonus structure for the night. While the standard fight of the night and performance bonuses remain in place, an additional $1 million in bonuses, backed by Crypto.com, will be distributed among fighters on the card. That makes it one of the most financially incentivized events in UFC history, with every competitor eligible to benefit. Taken together, the rule change and financial incentives underline just how different this event is from a typical UFC show. Between the historic location, the high-stakes matchups, and the willingness to bend long-standing policies, UFC Freedom 250 is being positioned as a spectacle unlike anything the promotion has ever attempted. Islam Makhachev and Ian Machado Garry are heating things up online as speculation grows around the welterweight champion's next title defense. Makhachev recently stirred attention by hinting at a potential return in July, likely at UFC 329 during International Fight Week. While the full card hasn't been confirmed, the event is already shaping up to be one of the biggest of the year, with names like Conor McGregor rumored to be involved. The champion hasn't defended his welterweight belt since defeating Jack Della Maddalena at UFC 322. Since then, questions have lingered about his inactivity, largely due to a reported hand injury from that fight. A potential super fight with Ilia Topuria at UFC Freedom 250 also fell through, adding to the uncertainty around his return timeline. Enter Garry. The rising contender, who has been campaigning hard for a title shot, publicly questioned Makhachev's injury and suggested the champion might be exaggerating or even faking it to delay a fight. When Makhachev teased a July comeback, Garry didn't hold back in the comments. "First you say you have a hand injury, Dana said August, you're saying July. I've been ready since you last turned me down in May. We're all waiting on you, princess." Makhachev quickly responded, dismissing the criticism and making his stance clear. "Don't worry about my injuries. I'm ready at any time. I'm waiting for the contract." The exchange has only added fuel to the fire, with fans now pushing harder for the matchup to become official. Still, Garry isn't the only contender in the mix. Unbeaten prospect Michael Morales has built a strong case, especially after his win over Sean Brady, while the outcome of Jack Della Maddalena versus Carlos Prates could also influence the title picture. Still, the growing tension between Makhachev and Garry may be too compelling for matchmakers to ignore. With Ultimate Fighting Company expected to finalize the UFC 329 lineup soon, an official announcement regarding Makhachev's return and possibly his next challenger could be just around the corner. Paddy Pimblett has dropped a strong clue about his UFC comeback as he prepares for his first fight since losing to Justin Gaethje earlier this year. Pimblett's undefeated run inside the Ultimate Fighting Championship came to an end at UFC 324, where Gaethje outpointed him over 5 rounds in an interim lightweight title fight. The loss halted a 9-fight win streak stretching across both the UFC and Cage Warriors, but it hasn't done much to slow his momentum as one of the promotion's most popular stars. Despite that setback, Pimblett remains firmly in the mix at lightweight. With the right matchup, he could quickly rebuild toward contention, especially given his name value and ability to draw attention. Now, fans believe they may have a clearer idea of what's next. In a recent Instagram post, Pimblett revealed he's been training with southpaw partners, including Dong-Hyun Kim and Seokyeon Ko, specifically preparing for a left-handed opponent. "Great to have Dong-Hyun Kim and Seokyeon Ko in the gym today. Some perfect rounds for me with some southpaws," Pimblett wrote. That detail immediately sparked speculation, with many pointing toward Benoit Saint-Denis as a likely opponent. The French contender has been vocal about wanting the matchup, and the timing lines up with a rumored return at UFC 329. Saint-Denis has been climbing the ranks with impressive performances, including a recent win over Dan Hooker, and has already shared the octagon with top names like Dustin Poirier. A fight with Pimblett would be a high-risk, high-reward opportunity for both men. There's also another wild card in the mix: Conor McGregor. Pimblett has been loosely linked to the former 2-division champion as McGregor eyes a return, though that matchup remains speculative for now. For Pimblett, the focus is clear: bounce back quickly and reinsert himself into the title conversation. Whether it's Saint-Denis, McGregor, or another top contender, his next fight will be crucial in determining how fast he can climb back toward the top of the lightweight division. With International Fight Week approaching and UFC 329 expected to be finalized soon, all signs point to Pimblett being part of a major summer card and potentially stepping into one of the most important fights of his career. Norma Dumont didn't hide her frustration after Amanda Nunes declined the chance to face her for an interim belt earlier this year, and she's now openly questioning the reasoning behind that decision. When Kayla Harrison withdrew from a planned clash with Nunes at UFC 324 due to a neck injury, Dumont quickly volunteered to step in on short notice, seeing it as a major opportunity to fight one of the greatest champions in the sport's history. Instead, Nunes made it clear she was only interested in competing for the undisputed title, shutting down the possibility of an interim bout. That response didn't sit well with Dumont, who believes the situation may have been about more than just championship status. From her perspective, turning down a dangerous short-notice opponent carried a different message, especially given the risks involved in derailing a bigger, more lucrative fight with Harrison. Dumont suggested that hesitation could stem from the potential consequences of a loss, arguing that fighters who are fully confident in their abilities don't shy away from high-risk matchups. She pointed out that accepting fights on short notice is part of the sport and emphasized that she had no issue doing exactly that, even against a legend like Nunes. To her, the refusal felt like a calculated business move, one that protects a marquee matchup rather than testing all available challengers. The Brazilian contender, who is preparing to extend her winning streak when she faces Jocelyn Edwards at UFC Vegas 116, also questioned the timing of Nunes's comeback. Having not competed since her 2023 retirement following a win over Irene Aldana, Nunes returned with the intention of taking on Harrison, a former teammate turned rival. Dumont believes that focus on a single opponent suggests a limited objective, rather than a full-fledged return to defend or reclaim dominance in the division. Looking at the bigger picture, Dumont isn't convinced the title picture will remain stable regardless of how the Nunes versus Harrison fight plays out. She speculated that if Nunes wins, retirement could once again be on the table, especially if her primary motivation was settling personal rivalry rather than rebuilding a championship run. On the other hand, if Harrison emerges victorious, Dumont believes the new champion could pursue alternative matchups, potentially even moving toward a clash with Valentina Shevchenko, instead of facing top contenders in her own division. That uncertainty has only added to Dumont's frustration with her current position. Despite being on a strong run, she says multiple attempts to secure fights against top-ranked opponents have fallen through. According to her, the UFC has made efforts to book bouts with names like Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena, but injuries and declined offers have repeatedly stalled her momentum. As a result, Dumont has shifted her focus towards simply staying active and making her case whenever possible. Against Edwards, she sees both danger and opportunity. A physically strong opponent with knockout power, but one she believes lacks the technical polish to match her across all areas of the fight. For Dumont, the immediate goal is clear: deliver a statement performance, remind the division of her presence, and continue pushing for the kind of high-profile opportunity she feels has so far eluded her.